What's up, guys? Our wrestling podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious along with Jess the Total Package, Craig the British Bulldog, and Cuz is off this week, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Someone feed me today's topic.
This topic I've been wanting to do for a while, and we are finally going to do the Legacy of Sensational Sherri.
I'm excited. This is going to be good. Sensational Sherri, Scary Sherri, Queen Sherri. There's lots of names.
Elizabeth gets the reputation as the first lady of professional wrestling, but you want to talk about the kind of the best worker and the best heel and the woman that did the most and can take the most bumps and the best in building characters and one of the most unappreciated. Plus, she had the skills in and out of the ring. There was no bigger package than Sherri, and she had so many moments of our childhood, and she's underrated and forgotten. And I am also very glad that we are touching on Sherri Martel, last sensational, checked, scary.
I could think of one bump that Elizabeth took. I'm pretty sure Sherri was taking bumps even on house shows every single night. With all the dudes out there making it happen, Captain. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Google Podcast, or watch our videos at our wrestling something. They'll get back to you on that. On social media, give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter at OWP2019, or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. Guys, are you ready for some scary Sherri? Just want to get right into it. Baby. All right, yes. Let's go. Let's do this. Sherri Lynn Russell was born February 8th, 1958. In Birmingham, Alabama. She became involved in pro wrestling in 1980 and was trained by Butch Moore in Texas as Sherri Martel. After realizing she needed more training, she went to the fabulous Moolah for further guidance and to take some of her money, I'm sure. Moolah changed her name to Sherri Martel and sent her to Japan to finish her training there and took a cut. I can't stop. Unfortunately, Sherri would engage in the nightlife and eventually get kicked out of Moolah school for not focusing or paying her cut. I
kind of love that. I kind of love that she was kicked out of Moolah school and rose above despite that fact, because a lot of people never had that second chance. So good for her.
Yeah, absolutely. For not focusing, whatever. She went to Tennessee where Jim Cornette became her manager there. She became injured shortly after and began managing other wrestlers to keep collecting a paycheck, which, by the way, is where she really seems to shine. In 1985, Sherri joined the AWA thanks to Larry Zbyszko in her debut match at Super Clash. Sherri defeated Candy Devine, or is it Devine or Devine, sorry, to win the AWA Women's Championship there.
So did I. That was a double leg Nelson. There's a small package.
And a quick cover. Martel is hanging onto the rope. And we got a count of three. We did get a count of three as referee Gary DeRusha signaled to the timekeeper to ring the bell. DeRusha did not see that Candy Devine had that flag draped over the bottom rope strand. We will get a chance to take a look at it again, as here you have Sherri Martel with the championship belt, which absolutely should not be.
Well, two people are very happy.
There.
It was definitely Devine.
Devine? Gotcha.
No, it was. There's no way it was Devine.
Yeah, like right away, AWA, people tend to forget about AWA. One of these days, I'm going to put together something on the AWA to talk about it. But it was considered one of the big three back in the day, and especially back in this time. It was starting to falter a little bit, but it was still really popular, the AWA in Minnesota. And Sherri winning the women's championship in her debut match, like she kind of instantly splashed on the mat. You know, it was easy but hard for women, I think, to get noticed back here, because if you weren't a part of Moolah's clique, her stable that she would rent out, and take a big cut, as Dave would say, it was hard because Moolah was either married to the top promoter or she was in with the top promoters, and they went to Moolah to use the women. Moolah had to give her approval and quote unquote rent them out, basically, is how Moolah made so much money. Sherri, broken away kind of at this point, was sort of like on her own path. And so to go in the AWA and just kind of right away win the championship says a lot. And you're going to go on to read here too, she also cut her management teeth as well. And so we kind of knew her more as a manager because unfortunately, after this time, women's wrestling in the U.S. was fading out quickly. and it would try to have these little lame revivals here and there. And up until 6-7 years ago, it wasn't really a thing. Well, I can't say that. In like 2001 and 2 and 3, you had Trish and Lita and Jazz and all them or whatever. But women's wrestling's had a long, hard path, and there was no like women's division for Sherri to hang her hat on here.
It was Moolah or nothing for 45, 50 years.
They were attractions like small people, and I don't mean that to be rude, but some territories would be like, yeah, give me the small people so we could have a small person match. Or what are the women doing, Moolah? Oh, I'll give you two of my best, hon. I'll give you two of my best people. Like,
you could argue she held back the competition of the women's set.
She was making tons of money on her own. Giving them more money than they probably would make, at the local dairy store, in their town. But at the same time,
Vince still paid her after that, so good for her.
Yeah.
So, in addition to wrestling, she did become the manager of Buddy Rose and Doug Summers, and they won the AWA Tag Team Championship.
It's also where she met Shawn Michaels. They feuded with the Midnight Rockers in AWA. Wow. Sherri had her encounters already with Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, even back here with the AWA.
Yeah, and we're going to jump right into, speaking of Shawn Michaels, we're going to jump into the World Wrestling Federation. Apparently, she followed Jesse Ventura, and she made her WWF debut on July 24th, 1987, and defeated the Fabulous Moolah, that's getting back, to win the WWF Women's Championship and renaming herself Sensational Sherri.
Oh, look at that. Sherri hooked her, takes her over. It's unreal. History has been made here. Unbelievable. History made here in the Sam Houston Coliseum. Women's World Title holder, Sherri Martel.
She would hold the title for 15 months until losing it to Rockin' Robin on October 8th, 1988. I swear.
That was actually a tour of Paris, France.
Off the top rope. A bulldog. She's close enough to the rope. Turns her over. She got it. No, I don't believe it. History has been made here in Paris, France. We have a new ladies champion. Where do you go? Listen to this place go bananas. Look at the look on her face. Let's get the official word.
France, when she lost.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Yes.
She would make a brief stint under a wig and sunglasses as the main squeeze of the Honky Tonk Man.
Now that I did not know.
Yeah, she was Peggy Sue for the feud with Macho Man. And even when he started feuding with Beefcake, his main squeeze would come out dancing with Jimmy Hart or whatever, and it was Sensational Sherri under a blonde wig and sunglasses. She was Peggy Sue, Honky's main squeeze.
Peggy Sue. Yep. As the company phased out their women's division in 1989, Sherri began to manage again. At WrestleMania 5, she would replace Elizabeth as the manager to Macho Man Randy Savage. She would be in Savage's corner as he rematched Hulk Hogan across the country.
So can I say a fun Hogan story? So when they were touring one time, he said there was a spot they always did where Hogan would throw Savage outside and Sherri would jump up on the apron to try to distract the referee. And Hogan would mimic her. Like Sherri would put her hands on her hips and point at Hogan. And then Hogan would put his hands on his hips, point at her. And then he would keep marching towards her. And then she would slap him. He said one night she slapped him so hard and she actually slapped him more towards the ear. And it created a suction, like, a suction, like to slap. Oh, wow. And he's like, I passed out on my feet and I don't really remember anything. And I came to and I was turning around and Macho was talking to me like, "Are you all right, brother?" Or like that. And I was like, I fucking think so. He said like the suction that it created with the cup of her hand when she slapped him.
And she's not holding back either. Sherri could lay it in. I mean, seriously.
That is more gorgeous than Miss Elizabeth ever could be. Hulk Hogan, I got me a manager. That is unbelievably sensational. You mean? Oh yeah, sensational Sherri. Brilliant, McMahon. What a brilliant maneuver by Randy Macho Man Savage. Here I thought he'd name maybe Bobby the Brain Heenan, maybe the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, but instead, sensational Sherri, terrific.
So
she took it as much. Yeah, she gave it as she took it as more than she gave it.
Oh, like, in all these matches, Hogan would fucking throw her over the top rope, give her atomic drops, like clothesline her.
Yeah,
I'm
sure he grab her by the hair and throw her into the ring a lot and that kind of thing. You know,
my goodness, Sherri was awesome. And when we would do cage matches, she would always climb the side of the cage. And try to get up on top of the cage with you. She was awesome. Sherri.
I remember we used to watch videos, and it was like, I wish she would leave her alone. Like I started to root for her. Like she was the heel, and like you were supposed to cheer when she took this stuff, but I was like, no, like ow, like stop.
Yeah.
Like
I think people like us that are kind of geeking out over wrestling, we grew respect for her even when we were watching this real time. You know, we're like, wow, Sherri's really taking a beating right now. Like, okay, how many women are gonna get in the ring and get just lariated by a man? And she would do that like every week, so you have to that this is the respect I think we're talking about that was early on for people like us. So.
And it's hard to imagine anybody but Elizabeth with Macho Man, but Sherri molded with him just absolutely perfect. The heel
she
Randy Savage.
With everyone. I mean,
welcome, Sister Sensational, welcome.
Miss Elizabeth, I know you're out there. And Miss Elizabeth, I know that you can hear me. Miss Elizabeth, I have something to say to you. I am more woman than you have ever dreamed of being.
I mean,
she was. I mean, they were such a great match. Not as good as Elizabeth and Savage because they were two opposites. Elizabeth and Savage, but like Sherri was. If he's going to be dirty heel, she was right there. She was such a dirty heel, and she was amazing. And she was loud. You would hear her screaming at ringside, "Come on!" Like screaming and slamming the mat, And she was fantastic. Like she was just like
she always added additional value to whatever matches she was involved in. So. During this period, Savage would defeat Hacksaw Jim Duggan to become king of the World Wrestling Federation. He would change his name to the Macho King. I remember this. It's so much fun. And then Sherri became Queen.
I don't know, but we're all still looking for her.
You want me to do the job for Savage tonight, boss? No problem. Hey, Randy, what are we doing tonight? Like this, Hacksaw.
I couldn't help it. I'm just watching.
Sherri, you gonna slap me? Are you gonna get on the apron? Awesome stuff, Sherri. Good job.
It's gonna be great.
With the fucking crown flopping on his head. And can I give credit to Savage and Sherri? So most people, the King's crown was a silly gimmick. I mean, they used it for Harley Race. They put it on
because it wasn't even King of the Ring, right? It wasn't even.
No, it was just it was just the gimmick, the crown gimmick. Yeah. So when Savage wins it, he was World Wrestling Federation champion for a full year. The whole storyline pretty much dictated that he was going to lose to Hogan at WrestleMania 5. He loses Elizabeth, which was like a big part of his act. He gets Sherri, who's equally as good, and they both embraced the shit out of the King and Queen gimmick. They were amazing. Savage changed his entrance attire. He was carried to the ring every match, not just periodically like Haku would be or King. Every match he was carried down on that plank that all the prelims would carry. Sherri was Queen Sherri. She started wearing makeup with crazy crowns and stuff. And they both embraced it. Macho Man falls from grace, not world champion anymore. Is like, look, if they're going to give me this, I'm going to fucking do the best with it. And what a great partner to have in Sherri, because Sherri just embraced the hell out of this. And they were both so funny as King and Queen. They were amazing. They were awesome.
Yeah.
That goddamn scepter that Savage would carry.
Yeah. They both deserve credit for making the gimmick work. They would feud with Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire and compete in a mixed gender tag match on April 1st, 1990 at WrestleMania 6. Though they would lose, Sherri bumped all over for Sapphire and Rhodes, making them look, especially with somebody like Sapphire, who was not a worker in any way, shape, or form.
You have to go back and
making
watch
Sapphire look strong.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she did the same thing with Elizabeth, too. Before that, I didn't mention that at SummerSlam 89, she was in the corner of Zeus and Savage as they took on Hogan and Beefcake. But Elizabeth was there as well. Sherri got her ponytail cut off at the end of the thing. It was obviously a fake extension.
Sure.
But Beefcake cut her ponytail off at the end, but she made Elizabeth look good. Every time Elizabeth would get her hands on her, Sherri would bump for her, and Elizabeth would grab Sherri by the hair and spin her around, and Sherri had no problem because she knew the more I put her over, the more heat I'm gonna get. Like, this is the best. Like, Sherri was just the best. Like, really.
Yeah, I think you actually have it here too with Warrior, right? According to the notes I see here. After that feud ended, Savage became involved with the Ultimate Warrior. He would lose a career indie match to the Warrior on WrestleMania 7. After that loss, Sherri became enraged with Savage for losing. She turned on Savage by kicking him in the gut. Miss Elizabeth, with her beautiful star sweater, ran down to the ring and threw Sherri out by her hair, which means Sherri threw herself out by her hair, to Jess's point. This would lead into the most emotional moment in WrestleMania history as Savage and Elizabeth reunited and embraced. By the way,
forget that Sherri was a part of that.
Sherri is
she
the
literally
catalyst for this. Yeah,
she broke up. She quote unquote broke up with Savage that night because he lost, and she started kicking him. And then like my parents we'd always get these pay-per-views at my mom and dad's house, and they just blessed them for allowing all these teenagers.
Were they actually moved by it, Jess?
My mom and dad always loved like certain characters, and that's how I knew. One of the characters my mom and dad always asked about was, well, what's Sherri doing? Like my mom was like, oh, Sherri's great, and she always loved Savage and Sherri together. She's like, oh, Sherri's just so funny and loud, and she's evil, and like, so even non-wrestling fans or casuals, my parents actually became casuals kind of indirectly because we would just invade their living room and make my mom and dad pay $30 for a pay-per-view. So
we just walk in and say, Mom!
Yeah, we would have all of us.
I have the TV for 4 hours, Mom.
Yeah, and she loved it. Sherri was one of their favorite characters, especially my mom. She would always be like, "Oh, what's Sherri?" Years later, she'd be like, "What's Sherri doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, she's this and that."
That's awesome.
Yeah, Sherri was definitely one of the ones that we talked about a lot.
That specific moment when Sherri could have had her way with Elizabeth, and it wasn't even realistic that like Elizabeth would get rid of Sherri or be able to take her, but like for some reason it worked. She grabbed her by the hair, threw her out, and Sherri kind of bailed. And then the whole magic of like Savage being like the wounded dog, like not knowing who's there and striking it like Elizabeth, like the emotion of that moment, like that's just well said. It's one of the, if not the most emotional moment in WrestleMania history. Like
that Sherri,
it was amazing. And all Sherri was the catalyst to start. Had to be believable enough to beat up Savage and have him beaten after the match without any other interference. And then to take the hair pull back out the ring and then kind of disappear, or at least like fume at ringside. And then that whole piece of Savage, like not understanding it was Elizabeth and still think he's being beaten by Sherri. It was outstanding.
Well done.
By everybody. Like Sherri's the best.
To your point, like Elizabeth can throw Sherri out of the ring, but for real, Sherri can hit Hulk Hogan hard enough to knock him out on his feet for a few seconds.
Yeah,
like Sherri can still sell it that way.
She had to be tough enough to have Macho Man scared of a woman from beating her up, and then but bail out of the ring when Elizabeth just threw her out.
That's working. That's working, gentlemen. That's working all day long. Sherri would appear on the card later in the card during Ted DiBiase and Virgil's match. She would side with Ted DiBiase and attack an injured Rowdy Piper to become his manager, meaning DiBiase. Overall, her alliance with DiBiase.
Oh, man. It can't get any worse than this. Oh, Sherri! Like, and just starts kicking the shit out of him.
But
Come on.
I will, and she managed DiBiase until he formed a tag team with IRS in '92. But I'll tell you, there's some great pictures of Sherri and $1 Million Man just on the town kind of thing. I almost picked that for our backdrop today because I was.
She started, she would start again. She changed her costume. She started wearing matching dresses with dollar signs on them and stuff like that. Sherri was great. Like she molded with everybody, and I think
crazy question on that. Do you think she went to the seamstress and put that out of her own dime, or do you think like Vince set that up for her?
I'm not sure. A lot of them, I think Savage paid for his own shit. There's a lot of guys that when they would go over the top. Nowadays, the seamstresses do everything. Like for the characters, but no, back here I think a lot of guys and girls made their own shit, or would pay to have that same designer do something different out of the norm.
Yeah,
but even beyond that, it was like you were either kind of just the valet or whatever. But like Sherri was never just the valet, so like she threw her all into every character, and whether it was the costumes, and later on we'll talk about later the makeup when she was scary Sherri, like. But like she was always willing to get involved and take bumps and get the shit kicked out of her. Whereas like most of the women before her, like would never take a bump and like would never like she was just a perfect mix of a Cornette Heenan-esque manager, but as a woman with a different dynamic but changed her image so many times depending on the wrestler that she was managing. Like she was a chameleon. She was great.
And that's a good point too. Like good call how, now that I think about it, and maybe it's just because we're doing this episode, how is she not mentioned in the same breath as like the Cornettes and the Heenans?
Yeah.
I don't know why she wouldn't be.
It's really a fair point.
I don't know if anybody just didn't, because she was a woman's wrestler, even though she managed way more than she wrestled for the most part.
Yeah. I'll tell you straight
even
up,
though she won the 2 major championships.
She was not a valet at at in my opinion. People might try to.
She was a manager. She was a manager.
She was a manager.
She was just as strong as Heenan and Cornette and Jimmy Hart and Slick and all those other guys. She was just as good. And now that I think about it, like I never think of her in the same breath as that. But how am I not?
Maybe because
she managed the AWA Tag Team
She did bump
Champions
better than them, Jess. I mean, we think of her as a wrestler before we think of her as a manager.
I think that's why.
Maybe that's why.
And going back to Craig's point too,
she's in the top 5 managers out there.
She got the nickname of Scary Sherri not by herself. It was before SummerSlam '89. Brutus Beefcake came out and confronted her on a Brother Love show and said, "You know what? You're not sensational. You're scary, Sherri." And then he had the whole crowd chanting "Scary Sherri," and then Savage attacked him from behind, and that's the setup there.
I did not
set up the.
So you're saying that's the one thing that Brutus ever did in his wrestling career that was good was the Scary Sherri.
Possibly.
Yeah, good for him.
But,
thanks,
yeah,
Brutus.
I think the best thing
that was
Brutus
like
did
her
was
nickname for the fans. So the fans, so she got even more heat because the crowd would start chanting "Scary Sherri" at her, and she'd get all mad and pissed off when they would do it.
Yeah, she's inside. She's eating it up.
And Dave, to your question, I think the best thing Brutus ever did for the business was buy that barbershop. Where that Marty jumped through to escape Shawn.
Being in the right place when Shawn Michaels threw Marty Jannetty through the window. That was the best thing that he
So he has two accolades to his career: the barbershop, where from the super kick, and calling Sherri Scary.
Yeah,
Sherri.
and one was he purely just woke up and came to work, and then that made him famous accidentally.
Well, it helps when you got the Hulkster in your corner.
Oh, brother, he's my good friend, brother.
Yeah, he's gonna be the next champion, brother.
Oh, brother, fuck him.
All right, Jess, you have 15 seconds to name all of Brutus's gimmicks. Go.
Oh God.
Oh my God. Is it
1,
Zodiac?
2, 3,
Booty Man?
4,
Brutus Barber Beefcake?
6.
Fuck.
7.
I'm probably missing one.
8.
I don't remember.
Brother Brutai.
No, it was Brother Bruta. That was Hogan's stupid nickname for him.
Is that really a character? Yeah.
Yeah, that was unfair of me to do that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I pulled Booty Man out of my ass.
You literally put Booty Man out.
And you remembered Zodiac.
Yeah, Zodiac.
Good job. I think because we were talking about Bash of the Beaches and he was Zodiac.
Yeah.
That's right. It was recent memory. So good stuff. Sherri would then accompany Shawn
Can
Michaels.
I say something real quick?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to talk about Bruce Beefcake again.
I already know what's on the Insta next week.
Can we please put up on the screen right now that picture of him and Greg Valentine just like eating snacks on the
I swear it's like 2 grandpas
and a weed pipe on the thing, which I love. I love them.
Fantastic.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
All right.
No worries.
All right.
All right.
Now that we've properly roasted Beefcake for no reason.
Oh goodness! I want to try to bring this back. Sherri would then accompany Shawn Michaels to the ring and give him heat as he began his single run as a heel. Jess, can you please find the recording that I know is there where Sherri's singing his whole song?
Yes, and I was just going to say that too. The first version of Shawn Michaels' "Sexy Boy" song was Sherri singing it.
Yeah,
it was Sherri singing
cute.
it. Yeah. Oh, Shawn!
Yeah,
I think he's cute.
I miss it.
So she was like the main squeeze. They were trying to play it off that she was an older woman and he's the young heartthrob. And, Shawn never really... It's funny because his character kind of reflected the way he felt in real life. He respected Sherri and loved Sherri, but he was against Sherri being his heater from the start.
Yeah, and by the way, this is another reason why Shawn Michaels is an asshole.
Well, I don't know. I don't agree with that. I mean, I agree with he's an asshole. Absolutely, I'm never gonna.
Well, come on.
Say that.
I'm reading your
notes.
He
felt in the beginning. He's like, I didn't need a heater. I just threw Marty through the glass. Like I could have done it on my own. And I think that was his stance on it. So his character on screen and that you could tell that she loved him more than he loved her, if that made sense. They always had that dynamic.
Yeah.
But because that's the way he felt backstage, was that he felt that I love her and respect her, but like she's not for me, and I shouldn't be with her, and I don't need this heater. And I think that was like the basic story. I think Sean said it on his
why change the music? Yeah. Why have him sing the theme song?
Because he's an
was it a financial decision? Like when she was
gone? After she was not with him anymore,
they already owned
it.
Like they already owned the rights.
But it didn't because it was just a woman's voice and a woman singing "Sexy Boy." So it's like, why do you need him singing his own song? And I never
understood. You didn't know it was Sherri unless you referenced it, basically.
So it's like,
I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, you can hear it. You know that's her.
Sensational Sherri along with Shawn Michaels. And take a look at the mirror, would you?
Take a look at what's inside the mirror. Look at there.
Oh, please.
This guy's got it all together.
Very scary, Sherri.
I don't know, Craig. He's a dick. What do you want from me? He's an asshole. I try to tell you guys that every week.
I'm sort of trying to tell you now, and you guys are why?
I know, and I'm fighting Dave for telling me that.
I don't know why I'm fighting
Dave. I don't know what you've done to us, Craig, but stop it.
Jess has always loved Sean. I mean, the fact he defends him every week.
Put in shitty positions where I have to actually like praise his work.
You are. That's twice. You feel like, I don't know. It's probably not Sean's fault.
Well, fuck you, Dave. It's not his fault. What the fuck am I talking about?
Yeah, I don't know why you're arguing it, but okay. At a taping of Superstars in late 1992, Marty Jannetty attacked Shawn Michaels and attempted to break a mirror over his head, getting revenge on Michaels for throwing him through the barbershop window 10 months earlier.
Here he go, right? Oh, no. Oh, my. He deliberately hit Sherri. What? He deliberately hit Sherri with the mirror right in the head.
He did not.
What kind of a human being is he?
Marty Jannetty was going after Shawn Michaels.
He hit a woman.
He didn't deliberately hit sensational Sherri.
He hit a woman.
I can't believe that. Contrary to what you're saying, Shawn Michaels pulled his manager.
Shawn would pull Sherri in front of him and allow her to take the blow, and she took it like a champ. After briefly being with Marty and Tatanka at the beginning of 1993, she was released that summer. That's nuts. That's crazy to me. What happened there, Jess? Do you have any info on that?
No, I think she just.
Well, I don't blame Shawn for it. I think probably what happened.
First of all, first thing I want to say is Shawn had nothing to do with it. I'm positive. No, I think she just ran. I think she ran her course, and I think she ran her course, and I think she was just getting. Again, Vince was going through that weird 93, 94 phase where it was like, we need to get older people out of here and newer people.
Oh yeah, on the it was cuts and cuts and cuts at that point.
Yeah, and I think Sherri just fell victim.
I just wonder though, like, in and this is all in hindsight, but how much money is Sherri really making? First of all, why did you have to make that cut when she could promote anybody in a heel fashion in a great way? I
think the roster was so thin back then, and it's
and I think again Vince was just going for new. He didn't want to
hurting, right? Yeah. To your point, they were hurting,
and it's not her fault she wasn't Mabel.
Right.
Or Yokozuna,
very good point.
I guess.
Thank you.
Excellent point.
Thank you.
Yeah, fair point, I guess. Let's get into World Championship Wrestling. After making brief stops in the USWA, ECW, and Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Sherri would join WCW in the spring of 1994.
I do not remember Sherri in ECW. Do you guys?
Yes, and actually, I don't want to yada past that.
You would.
She was part, I want to say, if I'm thinking, she was part of the original, the group that they had there was Shane Douglas.
Triple Threat?
Yes.
Oh, you're talking about ECW?
She was a manager of Triple Threat, if I'm not mistaken. I think she came down to the ring with Douglas, I think. I could be totally way off, but I know I remember her. She was in the mix for the short time that she was in there. Paul Heyman loved her.
Wow.
So, yeah, she had like some things to do.
When you land that WCW contract, you got to go, for being real about it. And so I'm sure it was more money, especially in 94. So she claimed she wanted to be Sting's manager at the time and painted her face like him. She would also come to the ring and during his matches and root him on. At Clash of the Champions 27, she turned on Sting and helped Ric Flair defeat Sting to unify the international and WCW world titles. She would manage Flair until late 1994 when she became involved with Harlem Heat and managed them to multiple WCW Tag Team Championships over the next couple of years. I have to say, guys, I'm going to go back again. and still say I'm still mad at Jess for like last week where he made me watch Bash of the Beach 95, but this was one of the cool sections of Bash of the Beach that we may never talk about, where Sherri is actually doing a lot of work with Harlem Heat on the mic work and the ring work.
Yeah. So before I get to that, I
really good.
think you have a great point. I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to touch on the Flair stint.
Please, go ahead.
Even though it was only a 5-month thing, like Flair never needs a heater. But again, you talk about perfect person to mold with Flair. Sherri was perfect for him in '94, and she helped a lot when Hogan came in. Hogan needed his security blankets, right? That's why he brought Jimmy Hart, and he knew Flair, and he knew Sherri. And so when Flair and Hogan fought at Bash of the Beach '94, Sherri was getting fucking slammed off the top turnbuckle by Hogan. Hogan was getting heat off her by clotheslining her and Flair together. Flair and her would try to cheat and whip Hogan to the ropes, and Hogan would duck and clothesline them both. You know, it was all the gimmicks that Hogan needed to feel comfortable, and Sherri was a big part of that. They also had a match at Halloween Havoc '94, Hogan and Flair in a cage, where Sherri fucking climbed the cage, and Hogan, as she's climbing in, he grabs her and fucking slams her into the cage. And like,
Came from underneath the ring. Look what Sherri's doing. She's on top of the cage. She came over the cage. Nothing. The nice match going in the cage with a leg pipe.
And like he was just beating the shit out of her like the whole time, and she was amazing, and she was flying all over the place, and she didn't care if her fucking dress came up or whatever. Like Sherri was just like, she was such a professional, and her and Flair, their interviews are funny. Flair and his Sherri, a permanent resident of Space Mountain, like, and just always like, yeah, she was just so
Is that
good
a quote?
on it.
Did he say permanent resident of Space Mountain?
On one of the interviews, yes, he did.
That's amazing.
She had a lifetime pass or something like that, and she like smiled or whatever and clapped behind him.
She deserves that. Come on.
There's a famous picture online too where she's wearing Ric Flair his black robe with the butterflies on it, with no clothes on under it. There's a famous picture on the internet. Like you could just assume she has no clothes. I mean, she just kind of had it.
And nobody thought to put that in the backdrop tonight.
Yeah, and everybody's
that's actually
comments
really hot.
Everybody's comments were always like, yeah, she just got off Space Mountain or something like that. Like that's everybody's comment. But that picture will surface all the time where she's in that robe. So they had a great time together. And even though it was only like 5 months or so, like Sherri was awesome with Flair. Like she again fit in perfect.
Could you
didn't need a manager, but
could you do a quick impression of Flair seducing Sherri in the hotel room at the bar just right before that night?
Okay, so here's my weakness in my Flair impression. I have
a
hard time doing his low Flair. Like just talking, I'll do like the slurring drunk, like is a world champion.
That's
like
fine.
That's like but I can't do, but I can do the over the top like Hogan, like that one, like whatever. You and me are in it tonight. No two other people exist. Like, and he's just that's my Flair. I can do that.
And go to work.
And for the last time, we're walking the aisle together. And one comes out, and it's me, pal. Like, and it's just I could do Flair all day long, like screaming. But I have a hard time doing
you could do that. You could do that. Him yelling at Sherri. You could do that. Him yelling at Sherri. You forcing her to come upstairs, like
Sherri. You drive me crazy in your presence.
Go.
The nature boy is out in full force. Get on the bed now. Put my robe on and let's go to Space Mountain. Arn, get the lights. Arn's in the room. Yeah, Arn's just in the room. Arn, turn off the lights and hit record. Like,
well, then
I go back to the Arn version.
Then I turned the lights off and then I closed the door behind me.
Told me to hit the lights, so I hit the lights. Man, that was fantastic. So back to the Harlem Heat winning multiple WCW tag championships.
Yeah, Harlem Heat.
She was fired from the team on a 1997 edition of Monday Nitro.
Well, and I do want to go back and actually go to what you were touching on. You know, I think I want to say they said it in their Hall of Fame speech, Harlem Heat. But like Sherri was a big reason as to why they kind of fit in that political climate. The famous story is like Bischoff had Hogan pulled aside. And he was like, you know, because apparently Hogan knows everything. He was paying Hogan the most money, so he's like, I got to get some money out of this fucker. So he pulled Hogan over, and he's like, hey, like I really want to kind of build a tag team division, and I don't really know who should I hire, who should I go out and buy, basically, to be like the crowning jewel of my tag team division. And Hogan famously said, "You have them; they're right there." And he pointed to Booker T.
Look at those guys. I mean, look at those guys.
He's like, they got everything you want. Like, why would you not go with them? And so that's when the big ultimate push of Booker T and Stevie Ray started happening. That's when they got paired with Sherri. because they wanted Sherri to give him a little bit of heat. And Sherri, you can't tell me that Sherri didn't help him with the wrestling political climate, that Sherri didn't help them with their promos, that Sherri didn't help them. Of course she did. And I want to say, I'm almost positive they did note that in their Hall of Fame speech, that Sister Sherri like helped them out like immensely. Like, and she was just amazing.
If it's in there, Jess, you're going to find the clip here, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, nasty boys. It's not your fault that you're idiots. It's not your fault that you got the whole WCW North Tower on your side. It's not your fault. Well, maybe it is that you want to come and beg for just one more title shot. Just one more time. Just one more time to prove yourselves worthy. But you're not it. You're not it, nasty boys. This is a Harlem Heat, the World Tag Team Champion, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And one thing else, when it's all over, it's going to be on like a steaming pot of neck bones, if you understand what I'm saying.
And we'll have more.
Yes, and you know, she just fit with them great because she was so good. She could fit with anybody, and she knew how to get in there. She knew how to bump. She knew when to talk and all that stuff. She was wonderful with them. Like, yeah, she was wonderful with everybody that she was with. But Harlem, another great fit. Again, why is she not talked about in the same breath as Heenan and Hart? She managed the world champion in Ric Flair. She managed Macho King Randy Savage. She managed Ted DiBiase. She managed Shawn Michaels. She managed Harlem Heat to multiple tag team championships. Like, I don't. She managed Buddy Rose and Doug Summers in AWA tag team titles. She's
and AWA Ladies Champion.
And WWF Women's Champion. Right, you know, like she is just as good as Heenan and all them.
Yep. We're getting into our late career and her untimely death, unfortunately. Between 1997 and 2006, she would make various indie spots, even returning to WCW in 2000 to wrestle a handful of matches there.
Wait, so why did she leave WCW?
I think her contract ran out, and I think she just left after a while. They just didn't renew it for whatever odd reason. And then she came back in 2000. I remember she wrestled Molly Holly, who was known as Mona back then, on WCW Saturday Night. I just specifically remember the stuff. And she wrestled a couple of other upstart women and, you know, put them over and stuff like that. But she just came back to wrestle a handful of dates.
I feel like Sherri put so many people over. That was like her deal.
Everything she ever did was just putting people over.
Putting someone else over, yeah. She made a legendary appearance with Kurt Angle in 2005 as he performed "I'm Just a Sexy Kurt" dun, 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 in WWE.
Yeah, in preparation for Angle's match with Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 21, Sherri comes out, and because she sang his original song, Shawn Michaels, she helped Kurt sing "I'm Just a Sexy Kurt, I'll make your ankle hurt."
I'll make your ankle hurt.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and it's crazy that I'm saying Sherri's name at the same time with Kurt Angle because it just...
The music.
What does he mean by that?
I think I'm cute. I got no metal. I got the moves that makes them all tap out. The angle slap, the ankle lock. Marty Jannetty still can't walk. I'm just a sexy Kurt.
Sexy girl.
I'll make your ankle hurt. I'm just a sexy Kurt. I'll make your ankle hurt. Woo! That's right, son. Eat your heart out. Hands off the merchandise. Woo!
Because it just shows how far advanced she was and how relevant she was. She could, yeah.
She wrestled. Wow. That's my pop's voice coming out there. She wrestled her final match in 2005 in a 6-man or woman match. I'm not sure if it was
man or
woman.
You're right.
At Wrestle Reunion. She was inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame by Ted DiBiase as a part of the class of 2006. On June 15th, 2007, Sherri Martel dies at her mother's house near Birmingham, Alabama. She was 49 years old. The toxicology report found an overdose of multiple drugs, including a high amount of oxycodone, which, by the way, guys, I don't want to make this into like the more you know or CNN brief or anything, but oxy is just a massive killer of so many people, and wrestlers are they're no exception to that. With pain and living with pain, and it's unfortunate. People,
how many stories do we hear of, like, you know, Hawk or Shawn Michaels popping like somas? You know what I mean? Like, that shit is meant to, that's your bedtime somas, and they would just pop them and wash them down with the beer, and you pop like 2 of them and go out and wrestle and shit like that. And Shawn Michaels has a story that he tells. He used to pass out during dinner, and his wife would have to literally pick his face up out of his fucking dinner and take him upstairs somehow. And after a while, she's just like, I can't do this anymore with you. Like, you're insane. Like, he would wash it down with wine or whatever and just be out. And like, you can't fuck with this stuff. And unfortunately, this generation of wrestlers fell into this trap, of just trying to mask the pain.
You talk about I don't want to say the standard of wrestling, because at this time, we're still in the women's division, but a lot of male wrestlers hiding this pain and using Oxy and their lives ending tragically short. But I think Sherri's right in the mix of this, because
of course,
what people don't understand about Sherri, I still don't know if we really painted the picture on this. Sherri was taking bumps on a nightly basis from 250 plus pound men,
of course,
and bumping for them and making them look good and putting them over. There's no way she wasn't in an incredible amount of physical pain at the age of 48 and 49 years old.
And by the way, as a woman, right? So we all know as married men, like, women have to get up earlier, get dressed earlier, put makeup on earlier. They have just a harder time and a harder schedule. Like, she had to do everything men had to do travel-wise and have the makeup on and be ready and be better. And just like Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, everything he did.
How much makeup was the Macho Man putting
backwards
on
in heels.
Match, right?
Yeah. Like, so it's tragic. Like, I mean, women have tougher bodies, but like, you saw the stuff that she took. Like, it's no different. I don't know if she's ever married. If that's
she was. I think she was married 3 times. She has 1 son. I want to say his name is Jason.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I think Sherri was always, she was always a wondrous soul. I think she really loved the road, and she loved being around the guys and like doing what she loved. And she, God, I wish Sherri was in her prime right now. With all the women's wrestling over the last 6-7 years and how it's advanced and everything. And I wish Sherri was around to see the first ever WWF women's pay-per-view. I wish Sherri was around, because I think that she deserves it, and she deserves that praise. And a lot of people reference the Fabulous Moolah because she held the title for so long, but look, I'm not going to get into my feelings about her and about how she kind of effectively pimped her women out. But
I'll say,
because a lot of that's accusations.
An episode on Moolah anytime soon as well.
Right. Well, and I don't have anything personal against her. It's just that you hear a lot of stories, and the reason why Moolah was champion for fucking 20 years, legitly, or whatever she held the title for, was she was married to a lot of these promoters, and she was the ringleader. So you went through her. So of course Moolah was protected. Sherri was not the Fabulous Moolah. She ended up beating the Fabulous Moolah at one point, kind of trained by Fabulous Moolah at one point, and kind of carved her own path. I consider, and this might be crazy, and I may not be thinking about this statement, but I consider Sherri the greatest women's wrestler ever. I don't know of anybody else who, and I know we just say it because we get partial to people who came around when we first started watching wrestling, but when you really think about it, that transition, how many people were left behind when Vince took went from 0 to 60 with wrestling, in the country? How many people just couldn't keep up or refused to break the territory habits or refused to change? How many people got left behind? Some were smart, like Sherri and all them, that jumped over and just took a part of it. But she morphed into this bump machine, this working with, like you said, Craig said, 250, 300 pound men slamming her around in there or whatever. And then she would still wrestle and, women. And there was no women's division. So instead of just fading into obscurity, she's like, I'm going to manage, and I'm going to take bumps for men, and I'm going to get in here. She might be the greatest women's wrestler of all time. She's definitely a trailblazer.
If you take the work into it and then take the mic work into it, I don't think there's any question. If you want to put technical skills into it, there are women that have surpassed her now.
Oh, of course,
but you could argue that they wouldn't be here without her.
I think Jess's point is there was no one she had the torch when she was the only one with the torch.
How many great promos and what kind of infectious character did Moolah have? None.
No.
Moolah had no charisma.
Yeah, she was
old. Go out there tonight and give my all. And Sherri's
come on, hun.
Moolah was old when she was 30. Moolah was old in her black and white photos. When there was no women's division for 10 years plus,
because
Sherri was the only one doing the mantle, and it wasn't just Elizabeth that was looks and aw shucks like the farmer's daughter, like Southern Belle. Like
Sherri was turning heads too, bro. Let's be real about it.
Sherri was the only woman carrying the entire thing, setting the tone for women moving forward. Like
when
whatever was needed.
At our age groups, Craig, to your point, and we're watching wrestling as kids and teenagers, I didn't see no fabulous move on television. I saw sensational Sherri.
Yeah. Moolah was like just some old woman that I kept seeing come down to King Harley Race every now and then.
She'd be like, "Hi, everyone." I'm like, "Who the fuck is this?" And then Sherri would come out and do the work.
And I will say, I wish she screamed less during my formative years. I didn't like hearing her scream a lot.
That was her shriek, though. The Sherri shriek.
But it was that was the thing. If her job was to get heat, and then she got
it.
Heat.
Yeah,
but if you hated her, she did her job.
But my God, that scary Sherri makeup, like that full black makeup with the fizzed up hair and the glitter, like she was just whoever she was with. She morphed fully into that character to help them get better. And she's not in the conversation of the best kind of women's character ever because she let everyone else shine.
She didn't have any division to live in, really.
No division, and she was a heel. She was a heel manager.
So she let Flair shine. She let Savage shine. She let Harlem Heat shine. She let DiBiase shine. She let Shawn shine. It was about everyone else, which is what ultimately it was all about, was making everyone better. And I just hope folks do remember her, and I hope this is a little piece of giving her some love.
Let's get into those championships and accomplishments. We talked about how she was in the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006, but she was also an AEW Women's Champion 3 times, a WWF Women's Champion. She was Wrestling Observer Newsletter Manager of the Year in 1991, and she is in the Pro Wrestling Cauliflower Alley Club and Southern States Wrestling Hall of Fames. So she's in at least 3 Hall of Fames that we can think of, right?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Yeah. It says a lot about where someone can be considered just a valet. Sherri is not a freaking valet. Anybody calls Sherri a valet, we might have words outside, because
she was a manager. She was a wrestler. Yeah. No. She was way ahead of her time when you really think about it, because she survived for years and made the majority of her career in a sea of men. And like a men's sport, a men dominated, activity.
Yeah. I don't know about it's just terms, but I think Jess, you said greatest women's wrestler of all time. I think greatest women's performer of all time.
Yeah.
Or female performer of all time.
That's fair.
100% on board with that.
Yeah. I'll take that all day. That's right. That's spot on.
And I would say top 5 managers. How is she not?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how is she not? And nobody talks about her in those light. They, again, like, the people that do deserve it, like Heenan and Cornette and, Grand Wizard and Hart and Slick and all them, they get talked about all the time. But I'm like, nobody ever talks about Sherri. And we named so many people, all the Hall of Famers that she managed.
Yeah. Give it up for Sherri, people. Go on the network and just watch Sherri. Go down YouTube rabbit holes and watch Sherri.
I encourage anyone to find her original recording of Shawn Michaels' theme song. and
I'll find it. I'll get it on here.
Keep it that way.
I'll end the episode with it, by the way.
Yeah.
You got to.
And also, during Booker T's moment when he says an unfortunate term, she's the one that looks over to him and says, like, "Why? What happened? What's wrong? What's wrong?
Are you okay? It's fine.
Are you all right? Did you met?" Yeah. Like, she comforts him.
Did you say what I thought you said? It's fine.
It's gonna be okay.
It's all right. We're not live.
We can edit that out. Oh, we did. Okay.
That's just a great episode.
Let's give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts. Or watch our YouTube at Our Wrestling, whatever the fuck you wanted to do this week. On social media, give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter at OWB2019 or at Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. This is Dave, Jess, and Craig. Cuz, go sell a house. Hit them up at Our Wrestling Podcast. Signing off. Have a good one.